Hello and welcome to the all-new ROKER RAPPORT EXILES preview podcast in association with Vaux Brewery. My name is Richard Spate and I'm in my little hut on the side of a mountain called Carnedd Dafydd in North Wales, and I'm joined down the line today by Bomber from Gloucester. You right there, Bomber?
Yeah, very good, Rich. Here again. People are going to get sick to death of my voice, but
They will do, I'm sure, but we do have something fresh and new for everyone. We've also got Jimmy Lawson, who is in Oxford, who's not really been on the pod main so far, or on the Exiles pod. You right there, Jimmy?
Yeah, very well, thanks. Very well, yeah. I've now done the studio pod. I'm losing my Exile virginity today, and I've done the extra podcast, which might be a first in terms of ticking all three. So that's nice.
Yeah, and you did the preview as well.
Yeah, man of many talents. Getting around.
And you've got our preview this week coming up. You can both relax tonight, safe in the knowledge that as you're recording with me, this pod will never see the light of day. So go crazy, say what you like.
That's the only reason I agreed to it.
Absolutely. So whilst the result and overall performance of the men's team at Portsmouth on Saturday was dispiriting, to say the least, last weekend also saw Sunderland ladies team follow their FA Cup victory over Watford with a 4-0 stonking home win over Derby at Hebburn Town on Sunday. The lasses, let's hope they're going to continue this unbeaten run in the league and the cups and get one step closer to their rightful place back at the top of the women's game. They're away at Hull City on Sunday the 9th, and then they've got their big tie, the FA Cup 5th round, that's last 16 tie with WSL side Birmingham City on the 16th. So away the lasses.
It just goes to show that, Rich, doesn't it, that they should have never really been put in that league in the first place. I know there's a lot of kind of talk around it, but I mean, if ever something's been proven as a wrong decision, then.
Well, yeah, it was all financial, wasn't it?
Yeah.
In the end, they weren't given the support at the end of the Ella Short regime, and then, well, they're rebuilding from tier 3, which is what the men's team are hoping to do as well, I guess. But Mel Ray's side are really going for it this season, and I think that game against Birmingham City will be a real test for them, because Birmingham not having the best season in WSL, and obviously Sunderland are on top form. So I think in terms of cup tie, it's all you're ever going to want. But on this week's jam-packed show, on our agenda, we have a chance for us to give our perspectives on what maybe needs to change after the men's team at Portsmouth, and a view of your perspectives on the transfer window. We've got an interview with Irish Black Cat Pete Sullivan, who will be at the International Fan Day on Saturday, and we'll have a little bit of news about that too, an exclusive, I think. We've got Playing Away, a game to warm your spirits, and not that it's particularly cold yet this winter, which is a bit weird, isn't it? And then Jimmy has got a preview ahead of Ipswich Town's match on Saturday with the Blue Monday podcast. So, lads, let's get your thoughts on what you think needs to change after this weekend. Now we've had a few days to reflect. Jimmy, you do the ROKER Report ratings, and you were pretty scathing about some of the performances at the weekend. What do you think we need to change?
I think the main thing, because we're playing another quality team, is we've just got to be more resilient. When we're playing these good teams, there's going to be times where we're going to have to soak up pressure, where maybe we're not going to be on the front foot, where maybe we're going to have to absorb pressure. We just have to do it much better than we did at the weekend. I think really that was the most disappointing aspect of the game for me, was the way the second goal went in, the whole team fell apart. So I think the big one sort of going forward with Oxford coming up, with Ipswich coming up, is that we've got to have a bit more resilience about us. We've got to take a bit more pride in our defending. We've got to concentrate a bit more sort of in our individual battles, and we need to communicate better as well. I think both goals, especially the first one, there's a real lack of communication from set pieces that cost us. So collectively as a team, the main thing I'd be hoping to see, just a much better effort defensively, just take more pride in our defending, as we sort of have done really under Parkinson. It's just refining that sort of tenacity and intensity that we'll need when we're playing the other good teams in League One that can really hurt us.
Yeah, I was surprised really that it looked so shambolic when I've seen the highlights, given that we, well, until then had the best defence statistically in the league. Bomber, what were your thoughts about our defensive performance and like maybe what needs to change, keeping in mind that we're going to have to make a change?
Yeah, so I think change is inevitable. I've been calling for it for a couple of weeks, the need to change up. But I do accept that there hasn't necessarily been the strength in depth to justify changing it up. I'm not the only person who said that, Max Power and Dobson have needed a bit of a break. It was uncharacteristic, wasn't it, defensively? Parkinson seems to have got that bit at least, pretty bang on with the however many clean sheets in a row, and we've just generally not been conceding goals. So to concede 2, which I do consider, and I think everybody considers to be quite sloppy goals, is quite uncharacteristic now. But also it could have quite easily been more. I know people make a lot about the 09 chance, if that had gone in, if we'd have got the penalty, etc. But not a lot's been made of the fact that John Marquis missed a sitter. McLaughlin had to pull off a couple of really good point-blank saves. It could have, just as it could have been 1-1 or 2-1, it could have quite easily also been 3-0 or 4-0. And we haven't looked like conceding anything more than 1 goal a game for the last 9 games, let alone 3 or 4. So yeah, it was uncharacteristic. I think it is a signal that things do need to change. There's just a lot of tired legs out there, and to play Wednesday on that pitch at Tranmere and then to play it Saturday and travel down to Fratton Park, I think it was just a bridge too far for a number of the players. So as the results have been good up to now, Parkinson hasn't really had an excuse to change it. He's got that excuse now, and I think he needs to take full advantage of it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I noticed just from the highlights and from listening to the audio commentary on Saturday was that it seemed like when we were put under a bit of pressure, when them fullbacks were pushed back, and I noticed they were getting crosses into the box. Both of the free kicks in the first half, one that resulted in the goal, came from 09 being put under a lot of pressure. And well, it brings us back to maybe some of the lack of strength and depth. The fact that he isn't a specialist right back 09, as much as I love him, maybe defensively he does lack. What do you think about that, Jimmy?
Yeah, no, it's definitely a fair point, and there were times where we saw it before, sort of last season, where 09 struggled a bit. I think for the most part, the good outweighs the bad with 09. But yeah, no, it does sort of highlight recruitment again. 09 was set to move back into midfield this season. The reason he's playing as a wing back is because McLaughlin's been a bit of a disaster. And that was one of the no-brainer signings. Sort of all the transfers we've made in sort of the last 18 months, you think 27-year-old guy who's been in the League One team of the year before, that was one that looks like an absolute no-brainer. And he's been so bad really at both ends of the pitch that 09 is our best option. I think one thing as well I defend 09 with, Ronan Curtis is one of the best forwards in the league. And you're right, he gave 09 the runaround in the game. He absolutely dominated against 09. But how many times is 09 going to be coming up against one of the best forwards, a guy who got 10 assists and 10 goals last year, looks well on track to do that again? There aren't that many players like him in League One. So for the most part, having 09 there with his energy, with his tenacity, he's not going to be exposed in the same way he was against the Portsmouth team that can take the game to us in a way that other teams can't. So I think that problems with our recruitment, there are problems with our strength and depth, but to a degree, Portsmouth are sort of, if not uniquely situated to take advantage of that. They're one of the few teams who really can ruthlessly attack us like they did on Saturday. I don't think we're going to see too many more League 09 horror shows between now and May. I thought Bomber raised a good point as well. Sort of one of the dirty secrets of our run has been how reluctant Parkinson has been to use our squad. I think part of that is due to sort of a lack of depth and a lack of trusted options. I think part of that's Parkinson being too conservative as well. I think he really did probably play our key players too much without a break over Christmas. I think he's probably been too reluctant to bed in Scowen quickly enough. And then there's also issues with sort of our striker options as well. So I feel like part of it is we've got a very conservative manager who doesn't really want to use the squad available to him. And part of it is, like you boys said, some holes in the squad as well. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see sort of how Parkinson wrestles with sort of his instincts to be conservative and getting a tune out of enough players to get promoted this season. That's going to be one of the more interesting developments going forward, really.
I think one hole that's definitely going to have to be filled is Joel Lynch. I mean, we had a bit of an update today on his injury, and thankfully he's alive. Because there was a rumour going around that it might be a lot worse than it's turned out to be. According to Phil Smith from the Echo, there are no signs of a serious head injury. But I guess we'd expect the the concussion protocol to kick in, and not to be available at the weekend. He did, however, get away with one himself when he slammed John Marquis into the post, and that video has emerged. Maybe the disciplinary committee at the FA might let him off the fact that he got knocked out a few minutes later. I'm not sure. But
so this might be my Sunderland tinted glasses, Rich, but I think Marcus has made more of a meal of that than perhaps it actually was. He's given him a little shove and he's like, yeah, okay, he's hit the post, but then he's kind of like thrown himself backwards as if it was like the hardest shove in the world. Lynch has used his own momentum to kind of edge him into the post, and he's not smashed his face or anything like that. I think it's a bit of a mountain out of a molehill, that one.
So what do we think in terms of options that we've got, though? Because Lynch is a left-footed central defender, and as far as I'm aware, is Ozturk left-footed?
No, Lynch is the only one.
Ozturk's not going to be no-footed.
And so that kind of exposes, I guess, the lack of depth in terms of that has been the key for that 3-4-3 or whatever you want to call the system, has been having a left-footed centre back on the left, or a right-footed ball playing centre back on the right of that three. I don't know what your perspectives on that and how we might deal with it.
You may be doing a slight disservice to Tom Flanagan in the sense that he's played a few games at left centre back. It's not the ideal position for him, but he has played a few games in that role. You'd ideally want a left-footed centre back in your team. That's one of the issues and one of the more baffling things about when Ross started playing it, that he moved Flanagan out there when Baldwin was the one who was our left centre back last season. I always thought that was a bit strange, but I think Flanagan's done okay in the odd points he has been called upon. And I know certain Sunderland fans who actually think, even though he's not left-footed, he's a better option than Lynch there anyway. So I think the system can work without giving too much away defensively with Flanagan in. But I'll nip out and let Bomber carry on his thought as well.
To be fair, Jimmy, I was probably going to say the same sort of thing, because there's two obvious things. One would be to suggest that we change the formation and go 4-4-2, 4-3-3, something like that, and I wouldn't be an advocate of that. So the only other thing is to change the personnel, and the only real option on that side would be Flanagan, because he's played there before. You could move Willis to the left hand side and put Ozturk in at right centre back, possibly. So there are options there, but effectively, irrespective of what you do, you're not going to have a inverted commas specialist left footer in that position. So I think it all comes down to actually who Parkinson feels will play better or perform better alongside, assuming Bailey Wright and Willis. So I think the fact that somebody's going to go in there that's not left footed, you just kind of have to accept and kind of make do with the rest of what you've got effectively.
The other thing as well I'd mention is that I'm not even sure Lynch was playing that well. I mean, I think most of his best performances were in those initial sort of 4 to 5 games he had in the 4, playing alongside Jordan Willis. Like, there's times where I watch him and I think, why are you not better at passing? Why are you not better at bringing the ball out from the back? I find him a really frustrating player to watch. So I'm not sure that the drop-off's going to be that high, because I'm not sure he's actually been playing that well.
Well, I have to say, when I saw him at Tranmere last Wednesday, I thought he was appalling. I mean, it wasn't easy to play football on that pitch at all for anyone, but it did look at times like he was scared of the ball, to be honest.
He's been like that for the last 6-7 weeks or so, Rich. Just to carry on with what Jimmy was saying, like when he first arrived at the club and he was playing alongside Willis in a 4, we were looking at him saying, oh, do you know what? He can play a little bit. He can get the ball down. He's got a bit of confidence. Certainly the games I've seen him, as time's gone on, he's just done more and more of pick the ball up, lump it into a channel, pick the ball up, lump it out of play, pick the ball up, lump it into the other channel. I can't recall a time where he's successfully played a series of passes into our centre midfield, which, effectively that's not what he's there for now. He was brought in because he had a bit of experience. He supposedly had a bit of quality on the ball. So I don't know if it's a confidence thing, but as time's gone on, and obviously during that time our results haven't been great, he's just become more and more of a pump it into the channels type of defender, which isn't really what we need now. So yeah, I mean, even if he was fit, you could probably make a case for him to come out of the team in any case. Ozturk, I think, had done a perfectly good job back there. I think he's been unlucky to have been dropped. So even if Lynch was fit, I wouldn't have been adverse to him coming out and Ozturk going in and us playing with a 3 of Ozturk, Wright and Willis.
So is there anywhere else on the pitch, lads, that you feel that we need to change it up a bit? There's been a lot of talk about freshening things up, maybe getting Scowen in. But for me, one of the disappointing things in the last 3 games or so has been Chris Maguire's form. Apart from his wonderful ball in the box against Tranmere, it was telegraphed that it was going to, that space was right in front of the near post. It was always going to go there, and he put it there on a postage stamp for Wake's Head. But what do we think about a bit further up the pitch?
Well, that's been Maguire's Sunderland career, isn't it? He has a good 3 or 4 games, and we call him the king, and then he has a bad 3 or 4 games, and we're begging for him to be dropped. And I think that's just been the story of Maguire's career, and it will continue to. We said it before, he's a League One player. League One players are inherently inconsistent. That's why they play in League One. The key thing for Parkinson is to recognise when that form's dropping off, take him out of the firing line until such time as his form starts to pick up again. He has those consistent peaks and troughs, and he's very much, I think anyway, he's very much in one of those troughs. So I think he needs to come out for a rest, if nothing else. He does work hard when he's on the pitch. It must be quite mentally draining for him to be the shithouse that he is consistently. And yeah, he's not performing as we know he can. So for me, he needs to come out. And I think we do have options, or at least 1 or 2 options there that we can replace him with, at least in the short term. For me, the biggest thing, even if we persisted with Maguire, is that centre midfield. And I'm sure 99.9% of the listeners will agree, a change of Dobson for Scowen. Dobson's not been great for the last few weeks. That same centre midfield partnership, I think, has played pretty much every minute of our 9-game unbeaten run, and it's just too much football for them. You can see that. You can see how easily we were getting overrun the last couple of games and how they were getting bullied off the ball. So that needs to change. That needs freshening up. It's nothing to do with ability, in my opinion. It's not even necessarily anything to do with attitudes or anything like that. They're just tired and leggy and just need a break. And of the two, Dobson looks like the one who's suffering the most.
Jimmy, you gave Chris Maguire a 4 at the weekend, and Lyndon Gooch a 6. So there was obviously a big contrast between their performances. Do you agree that's time for him to have a rest?
I'm really torn on it. I mean, I'm in complete agreement with you guys that he's not playing well enough. He hasn't played well enough really since the Doncaster game. But it's what we came back to, what we sort of started the conversation off with, really. It's a lack of depth. Last season, when Maguire wasn't playing well, we had Aidan McGeady, we had George Honeyman. There was a period this time last year where we drew 1-1 with Oxford and Maguire wasn't in the squad against his old team. And it just feels as if we're so much more dependent on him now. I mean, Semenyo came on and he looks extremely raw. He didn't really look ready. Obviously, he came on when we were 2-0 down and he just couldn't pick up the pace of the game. Maybe he'd look better as a starter. Watmore again had another one of those sub appearances where you're just sort of pulling your hair out, wishing he'd stay on his feet more, wishing he'd sort of toughen up a bit. And it's really tough. I mean, they're really the only two I can think of that Parkinson would consider starting instead of Maguire. And I don't love either option. I mean, I'm in complete agreement that Scowen should start, but it's tricky with Maguire because I don't love other options. The impression I get from Phil Parkinson's substitution patterns is that he's not overly convinced either. So it's a really tricky one.
Regardless of how good or bad Maguire is playing, with the ball 18, 19, 20, up to 25 yards out in front of goal, you back him to get it on target and back him to pop up with a goal, irrespective of how bad he's playing. So you drop him, all of a sudden, who's your free kick taker? I guess it would fall to Gooch.
Yeah, which is a big drop off in quality. And his corners have been pretty good for the last sort of 2 months or so. His deliveries into the box have been, they've been one of our best attacking weapons. So I think that's a very good point to raise.
Do we know how far off Embleton is? I know he had a bit of a setback because for me, he's the exciting option in those those inside left, inside right positions that Maguire and Gooch are playing in at the moment.
I think, if I remember rightly, Parkinson had said that he'd had a setback, so we're not going to see him for a few weeks. Now, obviously, a few weeks could mean 3, it could mean 5, it could mean 6. But given that his reluctance to make those sorts of changes, and given the fact that we've got Scowen, however we're deciding that we're going to pronounce it, in the squad, I think even if he was fit, I don't think we would necessarily see him, albeit for perhaps the last 5 minutes of a game, last 10 minutes of a game. I think that he'll have an awful lot of work to do to win Parkinson over. It wouldn't surprise me to see him in the under-23s for a good 4 or 5 weeks before we even consider him for the first team squad.
Yeah. So the lads on the main pod had a good chat with Kieran Brady about the transfer window overall. I mean, there was a lack of any significant spending in that window. We were beaten to a signing of Liam Boyce by fan-owned Hearts, and which gives a lie to the claim that some people have made that fan-owned clubs can't sign players. But what are your views overall, lads, of the success or lack of in the transfer market that we've had over the month that has just passed?
I think we've done okay. I think my issue is that we're looking at Scowen. We think there's a good chance he's going to improve the first team. I'm a bit worried that we've improved our depth without overly improving the quality of our first team squad. I was talking myself into Kyle Lafferty up until about 5 o'clock on Saturday, where I was sort of in complete horror as to how bad he was in the second half against Portsmouth. And now I've got all my fears about signing an Overhill player who's had attitude problems and fallen out with managers before, and I'm worried about that signing as well, and where are the goals going to come from? Have we added enough goals? I'm very sceptical of Semenyo. Maybe I'm being unfair. To me, he's a player who did all right in League Two, didn't do outstanding in League Two, who's still a teenager. And I just kind of feel as if he's skipping a step in his career progression coming to Sunderland. Like, if we're signing a player whose own professional football experience or his main professional football experience is in League Two, I'd want that guy to have teared up the league. I'd want that guy to have been one of the top scorers in that division, to have been one of the best players in that division. And I just look at his statistics, I look at his debut for us, and I'm not sure he's going to be ready to succeed and contribute. And my worry is that we've increased our squad, but we haven't added enough quality or enough goals, which is really what we need if we're going to go up.
Bomber, what are your thoughts on the transfer window?
Well, without knowing how these players are going to perform, because obviously I could turn around and say, yeah, I think they're all great signings, and then I could have 100 people come back to me and go, Will Grigg. I think I do disagree with you a little bit on the Semenyo thing, Jimmy. Not because I know what he's like as a player. I'll be honest, I'd never really heard of him until we were linked with him. But I think being concerned about the signing after 20 minutes or so of a debut, when we're already 2-0 down against a promotion rival, and he's not even been at the club for 24 hours, I wouldn't be concerned with him at this stage. If he's coming on off the bench consistently 2, 3, 4 games in a row and not making an impact, or being another Duncan Watmore, then yeah, I could start being concerned. I think for me, if you take away the fact that we've not paid a transfer fee for anyone, I believe, except for Scowen, because I'm not a great believer that you only make good signings if you pay money for them. I think far too much is made on the fact that we signed these players on frees or on loans. If they make a positive contribution and help us get where we want to be, I don't care whether they're free transfers, loans, whatever. So I don't buy into that. I think if you looked at the start, when we finished December and we were in that run that we just finished the Bolton game, for example, we're saying we need 5 players. We need a centre back, we need a left back, we need another striker, we need some cover in centre midfield, and we need another wide player. If you look at that objectively, that remit has been fulfilled. All right, we've not paid anywhere near the amount of money that people were throwing around saying, we're going to use all this £10 million loan to go and sign players, but we've covered those positions. And I don't think, on the face of it, what am I trying to say? So I think it's done more than just provide cover. We've signed a Welsh international on the left-hand side to provide competition for Denver Hume. So they're going to spur each other on. I'd like to think. That said, McLaughlin is also an Irish international, and he's not particularly flattered us. So I think that's provided competition. I think Scowen's certainly provided competition. Bailey Wright will provide competition. So we've filled those 5 places that we said needed filling. And until we get 3, 4, 5 games in to their tenures here, we can't really say anything other than we said that this is what we needed and the club has delivered it. If they turn out to be all donkeys, then yeah, we can argue and say, well, we've taken a gamble and it's not paid off. But for the time being, we've got the exact player, well, not the exact players, but the exact positions filled that we wanted to. So I don't think we can argue all that much at the moment. We just have to kind of see how it pans out.
Well, he's got some choices to make for Saturday, doesn't he? And yeah, and as we've mentioned, the next home game is Ipswich, and they had a bit of a tough time on Saturday as well. So I think it's a really big game in our season. on Saturday, the 8th of February, which is also International Fans Day, as we've been hearing a lot about on social media and on the main pod. The evening before, ROKER Report has a special recording of the podcast during the fan party at the Fan Museum in Sunderland for those who've booked from abroad, and they can attend that, and all proceeds go to the mental health hub at the Beacon, which is run by Washington Mind, a fantastic initiative on match days where people can go and get a cup of tea and a little bit of advice, a bit of a chat with a counsellor if they need to. So it's a really great initiative. The other thing that's going on that weekend, we've got a bit of an exclusive on, is that our very own Michael Dunn from the Irish Black Cats will be representing Ireland in the half-time challenge at the Stadium of Light. So if you go into the game, give him a cheer on. He'll have the Irish tricolour draped around him as a cape, I understand. He's been taking part in our running challenge and hasn't quite got
in inverted commas.
Well, hasn't quite got as far as everyone else because of his bad back. So if he's limping around the pitch, cheer him on. He'll get there in the end, and he might score a goal in the North Stand. And talking of Irish Black Cats and the International Fans Day, a couple of weeks ago, I had a really nice chat with another Irish Black Cat member, Luxembourg resident and all-round raconteur Pete Sullivan. And he's looking forward to his visit to the Stadium of Light for that special weekend for our exiles from abroad. And we've got a fan interview with him now. And I'm joined now by Peter Sullivan. How are you, Peter?
Hi, Rich. I'm good. And you?
I'm fine, thanks. Nice to speak to you. So you're over there in Luxembourg, but obviously I'm hearing by your accent that you're Irish and you're part of the Irish Black Cats. But how did you first get into supporting Sunderland?
So it's kind of a funny story, I suppose. So I've been supporting Sunderland for nearly 20 years now, and how I got into them was Championship Manager 3. And at home, my father was never really into say football, more into Irish football, Gaelic football and rugby. So I never really had a team that I was forced into, I suppose is the best way to put it. So I kind of grew up just say following football really, but not having much of a team. And then afterwards, once I got my hands on Championship Manager 3, got into that Sunderland team of the 98-99 season. And then afterwards, started following the team from 01, 02 really, and then that's when I say that the Irish influence in that team. So when he had like Kilban, Quinn, Thomas Butler, Mike Reddy even, and just I suppose that's where my interest in Sunderland came from. It was a bit left field, which has always been the case up to the point of when I was in university, and even then people were like, okay, Sunderland, why, how? Especially given that continuing, I suppose, on with the Irish influence when Mick McCarthy came in and we had the relegation and subsequent, say, the near promotion year and then the actual promotion year. So there's always been that kind of Irish influence in it, which has kind of not only just kept me interested, but actually made it a bit more kind of tangible that you had someone to support along with say Sunderland themselves.
It's a great era to get into Sunderland, isn't it? At that time, I mean, I didn't have much choice. I got into, brought along as a kid to Roker Park in the late 80s, early 90s. But it must have been exciting getting into Sunderland at that time with, the big names and that Irish connection, which has always kind of been there in one way or another, almost ever since, really. I mean, when I was a kid, it was Anton Rogan was the Irish player in the team at left back. I don't know if you remember him, but
okay.
No, that was going back to the kind of the early mid 1990s. But yeah, we've always had that connection, haven't we?
It's Charlie Hurley as well, exactly. Yeah. So
absolutely.
There's always been Paul Butler as well, just another name so, and so there's that I suppose kind of following on from there when the Drummaville Association came into it and everything with Roy Keane. Actually if you don't mind, I have a funny story about.
Go ahead.
So it was 2006, I went to get my first Sunderland jersey. It was a Lonsdale Reg Vardy jersey. So it was still kind of iconic, and
I remember it.
Absolutely fantastic jersey, especially with the Reg Vardy. But I went into a shop in Cork City called Football Crazy, And I went into the guy and I said, I want to get a Sunderland jersey. So the guy kind of looked at me and he's like, Sunderland, you've had like, say, 2 fairly bad years like in a row over the last couple of years. What are you doing as a Sunderland fan? I said to him, like, can you get me a jersey? Like, I don't know, like if I can get, like, this is probably before the whole, like, say, the likes of like eBay and Amazon and everything kind of really, like, say, started up in a big way. So it was quite hard to get things online. And he said he had to order at least enough shirts that he'd have to fill a rack and he'd never sell them. So he said there's no point. So I got my shirt directly from Sunderland itself. And that was okay. About 2 months later, Ryan Keane takes over. Ryan Keane being a Corkman, a proud Corkman, he basically, Sunderland took over Cork City, and it went back to football crazy afterwards. And they had about, say, half the shop was basically Sunderland paraphernalia. Fantastic. A dummy in the front of the shirt with a Sunderland shirt on, home and away. And even Jet 2 started flying to Newcastle from Cork. So
that made it a lot easier then, did it? I remember back then I had a half Ireland, half Sunderland shirt that I think Love Supreme put out.
Oh, wow, okay.
And I had a couple of Niall Quinn quote T-shirts as well, green, some of which I've still got in my drawer, actually. So yeah, that what a great time to be an Irish Sunderland fan, and it just lands on your doorstep over there in Cork.
Exactly. Kind of ironically, because I never had really anyone to go to the games or with me, like, because since we kind of split our time between say kind of bit of championship, and then once we kind of finally consolidated in the Premiership, I suppose at that time, since I was still in university, was kind of like, say, working weekends and staying with friends. It was quite hard to get over to the Stadium of Light, really. So, like, say, in my case, my only time I've actually ever been to the Stadium of Light was St. Patrick's weekend in 2007. And when we beat Hull 2-0, my girlfriend at the time, my now wife, bought me a Christmas present to go over to the games, because I was always complaining that I could never find anyone to go to like a championship game, because no one had any interest in. So I had friends who were Liverpool fans, Man United fans, Spurs fans. So like it was always hard. But then so I went to see that game 2-0 when Johnny Evans and John scored the 2 goals, and we're just on a great run, which is kind of reminiscent of, like, say, last year when we kind of went on a bit of an unbeaten run coming up to the end of the season, and this year hopefully now with our a good run of form, I suppose, that we hope that we can get something going up until the end of the year. But that's gonna, I suppose, kind of brings me on to the Irish Black Cats, where they've like, say, I went since I've been in Luxembourg in 2010, it's made it even harder to get to games because there's no real direct flights to Newcastle, or I have to go to Manchester or Edinburgh, so or London. So like with the Black Cats now, the Irish Black Cats, I've been to Rochdale, to Bolton, to Wembley, going to Ipswich now in a couple of weeks. So it's been nice to be able to have that, say, kind of ability to just have people that that have similar interests you can go to the game with,
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the great things about our branches and supporter groups around the world is the social element. I'm actually in the process of setting up a one in Wales, very tentatively at the minute, because you it's not just the traveling, it's the camaraderie, it's having someone to offload to, and the nights out. I gather you have some decent nights out when you're on these away days. I bumped into Michael Dunn, who's one of our contributors, who's an Irish Black Cat as well, in the concourse at Bolton at that miserable day in late summer. Well, it wasn't a miserable day weather-wise, was it? But it was a miserable game.
A game of soccer, yeah.
But I take it he's had a good time that weekend.
We did. Like, it's been funny for, like, getting a bunch of guys together who didn't really know each other, and we only really met through, like, say, WhatsApp. In my case, I saw back in, I think, when was it? Back in September, maybe, or even before that, there was ROKER RAPPORT ran a Let's Meet the Branches in there. Like, they had an interview with Michael Dunn, and he was just saying that we're setting this up, and if people want to get interested or contact us, email us, and sent him an email. And then afterwards was added to a WhatsApp group, and then I think the WhatsApp group went from initially, say, 5 or 10 guys to where we have maybe, say, closer to 50 people now.
Wow.
And yeah, it's massive. It's funny. Like we literally have fans in Ireland from, like, say, Donegal. Myself originally from West Cork, another West Cork one as well, who's not too far away from me. Just Dublin, all over the place. Really in Ireland, which is it's fantastic. Like to see how, and like say these, it's not just say fans that are people that have been following Sunderland for the last 20, 30 years or so. There's, like, when I went to Wembley to get to meet fans who've been only fans for the last 5-6 years, and I'm just thinking to myself, how and why did you, and it's not just family connections, they have different reasons, So it's been fascinating to, like I say, to meet these guys, just because we have a common connection that you meet up, and like say, I've made some great friends out of it so far, and like really looking forward to the Ipswich trip now, where we'll have the international, I think it's the international day. Like say, again, everyone will meet up with even other branches and other fans, which will be fantastic.
The club are putting together a kind of a full program for you that weekend, aren't they?
Yes, they are. So like that's something that's really interesting. Like so that's and it's something that I think there's going to be a lot of fans that are going to be, like say, from our side, are going to be traveling over. It's always nice to have, like say, an away day, especially, but like say having it at the Stadium of Light as well, and hopefully, like say, if we can keep the current run of form going, it should be good fun.
So you live in Luxembourg at the moment, which is a little bit out of the way, and I think you're the first Luxembourger resident that we've had on, and maybe the last, but you never know. So how do you follow along from there? Are there other Sunderland fans that you've met up with to watch games? What is there a scene there?
I've been here 10 years, and I think I've come across maybe say 5 other Sunderland fans. So we've always been a bit of a niche club, I suppose. Like I've come across pretty much every other Premiership club, or fans of nearly every other Premiership club over here. But there's, I say, at the moment, there's just 3 of us anyway that would meet for if there's games on TV like that, or that we would have seen known each other over the last number of years, that we would have gone to watch a couple of games together. But I think like the fact now that we've dropped into League One, it really has kind of say galvanized the fan base here, like that. We're saying that, okay, maybe the games aren't as accessible, so when they're on TV, you really do appreciate when you can actually watch them on TV in this case. So we normally have been meeting up in an Irish bar called The Pig, and we just, like say, a couple of days beforehand, we tell them, look, can you stick on the Sunderland game? Like last year when we had the run in the not the Carabao Cup, the Check-a-Trade trophy, that yeah, exactly, like all the 2 semi-finals and the final, everything they were more than happy to stick those on the telly for us. And then when the other couple of games were on, like playoff games or other games that were on Sky Sports, like the Doncaster game coming up now, they'll put that on for us as well. Like so, and like it's just, again, because you'd have other people who just have an interest in soccer, will just watch the games, and then you kind of get talking about Sunderland. And there was a guy that was from Gateshead who owned a bar over here in Luxembourg, which was just a real homage to Newcastle. I'll put it like that. But so like we used to kind of meet up with other, like say, Newcastle fans as well, like, and you just have a bit of banter back and forth, so like especially with the owner, like, so he was always good fun, like say I could say the sooner hopefully we get the derby games back again, the better, because again, like say, when you're not at the games and you can just be with the other fans, I think people kind of, it's great when you win, but it's nice to have like other people that you can kind of have a bit of crack with as well. So.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a common theme that's come through some of the interviews that we've done with people around the world, is that actually when it comes to derbies, people are meeting up in places and having friendly banter with Newcastle fans in a way that maybe in the UK we don't necessarily have that all the time. So I understand that you've met up with a few kind of legendary players in your time, and I've got a couple of stories that you might be able to regale to us, and that the listeners might find interesting.
Yeah, I will two actually that I have. One is say from one of the other Sunderland fans that I know, Ben Embleton. He was in school with Luke Ball. And he had a story about when he was playing in the school's soccer team, and when Kevin was injured, and watching one of the games and on crutches, and apparently I think disagreed with one of the decisions and made his way onto the pitch with his crutches to discuss it with the referee, as he does in a very, I imagine, eloquent manner as he would. And so another story that I have personally was a number of years ago. Niall Quinn was over at an Irish Luxembourg Chamber of Commerce meeting. He as a guest speaker. So he was working as chairman of our director on the board of directors of a satellite company, and he was over here for a couple of business meetings. And so, like, I'm in a room there with other guys, like, say, there's directors of companies, CEOs, and other kind of big dogs, and then myself and a couple of other, like, say, the Sunderland fans, and just other people in general who would be interested in seeing Niall. And afterwards, after he did his speech, and like the speech, like I said, he's absolutely excellent talker.
He is, isn't he? I heard him earlier in the year. He's just such a great storyteller, isn't he?
He is, and he just has a way with people as well that, you know, in this case, say I went up afterwards, he was just shaking hands with people before they had a kind of like a formal drinks function afterwards, and a couple of people were just coming up and saying, look, I just want to say hello to you, and, you know, nice to meet you and whatnot. So, and he was, say, like, dealing with people, like I said, you know, who would be kind of, you know, quite high up in some companies over here. And able to talk with them as well as when I went up to him. And then the conversation obviously was a bit different from business to giving him my Sunderland jersey, the Red Fardy jersey to sign. It was a lovely moment. He just picked up the jersey and he looked at it for about 30 seconds and was just intently staring at the jersey. And he was like, Red Fardy, wow, I haven't seen one of these for years. And I think it just brought the memories back, you know. And I had a good, say, chat with him for about 15 or 20 minutes at the time. And again, he was just talking about everything. It was actually interesting when he made, at the time, I think was Dave Moyes was the manager. So he was, I asked him about what did you think of Boise, and he wasn't too enamored and made a reference to Ella Short as the American. So I don't know what kind of, like, say, I didn't go into too much detail with him because I said that it's we could be here all night. But again, he went around in the reception talking to different people. And at the end of the reception, he was kind of, when people were rambling away, I said, you know, do you want to stay have a few more drinks? And no, I have meetings in the morning. I can't. I'm sorry. And I was like, okay, that's grand. But before you go, can I ask you one question? And he said, yeah, no problem. So at this stage now, like, it's 11:30. So he's like, I'm staying in a hotel where he did the talk, and he was thinking to himself, I need to go to bed. I need to just get out of here. Like, and I said, when you scored in St. James's Park in the rain, and when Kevin Phillips got the chip, what did you feel walking off the pitch? And I swear to God, it was just like, he was like a schoolgirl, kind of like, say, he was just kind of not giggly, but just, and we talked for another half an hour about just Sunderland. You know, he just loves talking about Sunderland. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant, you know. And I got to tell this is a story about my favourite player, and I got to tell the same player on a Twitter Q&A about
Go on then.
So myself and my wife, we said that if and when we ever have kids, that so my wife is a fanatical, to say the least, Harry Potter fan. So she always said that if and when we ever have kids, that we'd give them Harry Potter first names. And I said, you know what, I'm absolutely delighted to do that. No problem whatsoever, on one condition. So she said, okay, what's the condition? And she said that, I said to her, sorry, you can call them Harry, Hermione, Ron, whatever, as long as their second name, when they're baptized, would be Julio Arca the second, Julio Arca the third, Julio Arca. So you could have Harry, Julio Arca, Flynn Sullivan. So, you know, for an Irish kid being called Julio, maybe not the best. So we about, say, nearly 3 years ago, we got a French bulldog. And we decided to call him AJ, and it's not after Adam Johnson, but rather Albus Julio.
Oh, wonderful. So, Albus Julio.
So everyone calls him AJ, but so we said we'd just get it out of the way with the dog, so now we can come up with some other names. But so yeah, AJ is our lovely 2.5-year-old French bulldog, Albus Julio, or AJ as everyone calls him, because it's a bit weird to call him the full name.
Do you get funny looks when you go to the vets?
Well, on his say his passport, and normally everyone just calls him AJ, but like on his passport, he's given his full name of Albus Julio, and then afterwards in brackets AJ. So just say, look, just call him AJ. It's easier, I think.
It's funny, isn't it, how Sunderland permeates your life like that, and
exactly.
And, and how did Julio react when you told him on the Q&A?
Just laughing, and said, thank you, it's an honour to name your dog after me.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you, Peter, and we look forward to welcoming you to the Stadium of Light, the Ipswich match. I'm not absolutely sure that I'm going to get up for that. I may well try my hardest, but it's not always easy for me to get the 4.5 hours up from Northwest Wales to Sunderland for a weekend, but I think I might try. So lovely to speak to you, and cheers for your time.
Thanks, Rich. Thanks very much.
So that was a really nice chat I had there with Pete, a lovely guy, and he had some interesting perspectives on Sunderland, and off air some interesting perspectives on the ownership of the club as well. But I thought it was really interesting that he picked up supporting Sunderland from playing Championship Manager or Football Manager. Has it been a while since you two have played that game? I haven't played since, I think, 2001, when it was a choice between University or Champman, and reluctantly I had to give up Champman. Do you play the game? Have you picked up any clubs or any affections for a club from your days playing Champman?
More players. It's more the players I remember. So, I think James Ward-Prowse was captain of my Scunthorpe team that were battling out for promotion to the Premier League. And then when he broke through at Southampton a few years later, I was like, oh, get in. I had very fond memories of him being my free kick taker back in the day. But the problem with teams is, I'll go on a good save them in Football Manager, and then Sunderland will play them, and I'll be like, oh my God, I can't believe I like this lot. Their fans are awful. Oh, Bury was ruined for me once Sunderland played to them and lost to them. But it's more the players I remember that helped me along the way.
How about you, Bomber?
Yeah, I'm the same. So I remember the mid-90s Championship Manager, people like Alexanderson. Alexanderson, who was like attacking midfielder, striker, left, right, centre across the pitch. But no, I've not played in a while. Admittedly, I did download the latest Football Manager for mobile, played it for about 2 days, and then proceeded to break my mobile. So I don't have it at the moment. But I've got two kind of memories of Football Manager, Championship Manager. One was when I first bought the game, for some reason decided to manage Northwich Victoria and managed to take them up to, I think it was like the Championship, and I wasted so many hours of my life on that. So that's my one memory. The second one is I like to obviously edit the game as well. So I remember, again, when I was probably in my late teens, spending hours and hours creating the local football team that I play for, creating them on one of the Championship Manager or Football Manager, and giving myself 99 stats on everything. So I was by far and away the best player in the team, scored something like 80 goals in a season, and started off in the Conference North and worked our way up consecutive promotions into the Premier League. And I think I was top goal scorer in all 6 or 7 seasons, which makes playing the game a bit pointless, but it boosted my ego. So
I think I used to do something similar as well. My abiding memory is I used to like going in obscure leagues, and back then an obscure league for me was the Welsh leagues, and I picked up Bangor City, who then I've moved to the area, and I started to go and watch as soon as I moved down here, which was a bit strange, but I'd edited them so they had you could actually sign players and stuff. People would come, you had a bit of money to spend, and I think I took them. I think we got quite far through the UEFA Cup back in the day. And it's funny now because they're doing a bit of a champ man. I'm part of a Phoenix club, or a protest club called Bangor 1876. I'm a member and a shareholder. I'm doing some fan media with them as well, hopefully. And we're going up from the 5th tier in Welsh football, scoring 80 goals. I mean, they've scored 100 and odd goals already in 16 games. So that's a bit of a champ man style fantasy football experiment we're doing there.
Yeah, that's Championship Manager editor there, isn't it?
It is, definitely. And they've got all the club legends and everything. It is like someone's gone in and created a fantasy Bangor City team. So talking of fantasy games, we've got Playing Away coming up. Got a nice one for you today. A classic game from not that long ago. I'll give you the heads up here. There's He Who Shall Not Be Named was playing on the right wing. So if you can guess who was sub for, you get the point. But you know that there's one player there who we're not going to be mentioning. But the game we're looking at was played on the 1st of February 2014. It was Newcastle United 0, Sunderland 3. In the Premier League at St James's Park with Poirier in charge.
Oh, what a game.
So get Googling. So here are the newly tweaked rules, and we will actually stick by them, unlike Brett when he was doing this last week. I've got my 15-second timer. I'll get it up on my phone now. I think a duck noise should come out of my phone, actually, when we've done this. The newly tweaked rules are you take turns to name a player, but you get a 15-second limit on your go, and I'm going to enforce that ruthlessly with a duck noise, like I said. You get 2 lives each, Jimmy, because you've never played this before. If you name a sub, you don't lose a life, but you no longer have another go, so it moves on to the next player. The last man standing gets 2 points, and if you're both still in the game when all of the players are named, you both get 1 point in our as yet undefined league. And really, we should be giving each game a difficulty rating. I think this one's a bit of a 3 out of 10 because we are only talking 6 years ago, even though it does seem like a lifetime ago now.
It does.
So, Jimmy, I'm going to give you the honour of going first because this is your first go. So I'm going to start the clock now.
Yeah, remember the game very well. The game very well. We'll start with, it might have been his debut. If not, it was definitely his coming out party for Sunderland in Liam Brid Cup.
1 Brid Cup. Yeah, that's right. Just on
fine, Jimmy. Jesus.
That was very, very close. Are we still getting a duck noise? We are. It's not cancelling. Stop that. Chaos here, but Liam Brid Cup was definitely in the team. All right, Bomber, your go, mate.
So as per last week, I'm going to try and pick some of the low-hanging fruit. So I'm going to go goalkeeper Jordan Pickford.
Jordan Pickford was not in the team. So Bomber loses a life. Jordan Pickford
could be the quickest game
there.
ever. Oh, no.
No, it wasn't. Don't name it because you'd be giving it away. Right, Jimmy, your second go, mate, in the second round.
Yeah, I'll go for Fabio Borini.
Fabio Borini was there. Well done. So you've got 2. You're 2-0 on this. Bomber, your second round go starts now.
Vito then.
It was Vito.
I'm so angry with myself.
Well, you should be. Jimmy, your go, mate.
Yeah, I'll keep on picking off the goal scorers. Jack Colback.
He was there, the little traitor. He's that, yeah. Where is he now? Has he got another contract with somebody else, or is he still starting on their bench?
I think he's still there, isn't he?
Bloody hell. Anyway.
He was at Forest last year, but yes, sorry, carry on.
So it's 3-1. Bomber, you got to get this, or you're going to be trailing behind.
It's the pressure of only having 2 of us. John O'Shea.
Yes, John O'Shea is in the centre of defence there. Excellent call. Right, Jimmy, your go.
I think this was maybe his best game for us. That will Fulham away. I'm almost certain it was Altidore up front.
It was. That's one I wouldn't have got, I don't think. Just because I'm trying to write them from my memory. Bomber, your go.
Oh, I don't like this pressure. I don't like it coming around to me so quickly. Seb.
Seb Larsson is our wonderful replacement for He Who Shall Not Be Named. Well done. Jimmy, your go.
Right, it's getting a little bit harder. I think Wes Brown was the other centre-back, though.
He was, yes. Yes, you're still winning here, Bomber. This is to go 5-4.
We've got goalkeeper, 2 centre-backs, a centre midfielder, striker. Lee Barry.
Lee Barry Catamol was not in the squad, and Bomber is out. You've bombed Bomber.
Of all the people,
lost
Lee Catamol and Jordan Pickford should be 2 of the mainstays in any squad.
Pickford was a baby then.
Yeah, man.
Pickford would have been like in the non-league.
They'll still be in school. So, Jimmy, do you want to try and run through the rest of the team then? Because I'm not going to give Bommel a go.
Yeah, Alonso's definitely left back. That used to be my wallpaper of them celebrating Bruni's penalty. I don't know who the third centre mid is. I'd guess Key.
Key, yeah.
Get in. So I'm missing the right back, and then we've done it. I've got to guess Bardo. I'm not sure about Bardsley.
Jimmy's too good at this.
Oh, of course.
Too good.
So obvious. Oh, for God's sake.
I think as you had all those free shots, I think you've won that 8-3 in the end. So well done, Jimmy, on your debut. Fine debut performance.
It's a Saints mauling.
It really was. So, back to our current matters and our promotion push. The final section of the pod this week is the preview. Looking forward to the weekend's game with Ipswich. Jimmy, this week you are talking to the Blue Monday podcast, and we can hear that chat right now.
Hello, and I'm delighted to say I've now been joined by Rich from the Blue Monday podcast. Rich, how you doing?
Hi, Jimmy. I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thanks. Very well. Excited to talk Sunderland Ipswich. It's a big old game in League One between two promotion hopefuls, and Ipswich are an interesting team. You've obviously really been on the radar of Sunderland fans all season as a team that could be champions, that could be going up this season. And I sort of really wanted to start by touching base and get a sense of how confident Ipswich fans are that promotion is achievable this season.
Firstly, I'm glad you're excited for the game on Saturday. I describe myself more as apprehensive, and it's a long way to go. At least I'm Midlands based, so I don't have the whole journey from Ipswich, so I'm quite fortunate, but it's still a long way. And you'll have seen from our record, perhaps, or our recent games, we just don't beat the teams around us, down as maybe to 8th or 9th. So, very apprehensive about Saturday. As for our chances and promotion, it's a difficult one. I think a lot of people kind of perceive Ipswich fans when they speak to us as being kind of glass half empty, but watching us up close, you kind of really struggle to get any confidence about us. We're kind of very easy and soft to play against if you're a bit rough and don't mind giving it to us and stocking it to us, and quite a lot of League One teams will do that. But then we'll go on an amazing run, and the start of the season was great and built up the optimism, and then November, December happened. I just don't know where I stand, Jimmy. It's crazy, but here we are, kind of in 4th position, and I guess outside Ipswich fans, you'd be going, "Well, what you got to complain about? You should have seen us against Peterborough, I guess." Yeah,
I was a bit like that last season, where I've got some friends who support other teams within League One, and sort of ahead of playing Sunderland, I was like, don't expect us to be all that great, because we kind of had that run sort of in October and November where we were just sort of scraping wins together. I think we won 7 in a row. And then, I sort of went over to a mate's house to watch the Wickham game. And I was like, don't expect us to be a League One Barcelona. And that was eventually the game that ended the run. But we had points where it was like we were winning games, but the underlying data suggested maybe we weren't that great, and we're sort of getting by on individual quality. And you can find yourself sort of, if you do string together these wins, win these close games, maybe in a position that the fan base don't really feel is fully justified. So I completely get that, because I had similar apprehension watching Sunderland last year, really. So at the moment, it's completely up in the air. You're not really sure whether this Ipswich team is good enough to go up, I take it.
Yeah, as long as we're kind of there, you kind of you hold out hope. I mean, we spoke about this before we started recording, about how just bizarre and crazy this league is. You guys were here last season. It's the first time, certainly in a lot of Ipswich supporters' lifetimes, that we're in League One. And we talked about it on our podcast, that we just don't know how to read matches in League One, because even when we were at the start of the season and top of the league and beating most teams, none of us kind of felt, or certainly on the pod felt, that we were putting in performances worthy of those results. And certainly we were putting in maybe good 45-minute spells and sitting back for the rest of the match, perhaps. And so I guess I need to temper the kind of glass half empty kind of attitude that I've got with, we're still there. And again, as we talked about, 9 of our last 13 matches are at home, and if we can win the majority of those, then by default we kind of put ourselves in a good position, but it kind of feels like by hook or by crook we need to get out of this division, because Ipswich fans generally, myself included, feel that if we don't go up, we could be down in this division for quite a while, given the way we're run, and potentially the good players that we do have are likely to be taken away from us by Championship or Premier League teams in the summer. So I think it's now or never. But just to go back to your original question, I don't think any of us expected promotion. You guys had your relegation season to the Championship a season before ours. Ours was statistically worse. I know it probably felt worse for you guys, but statistically ours was even worse. So there's quite a big job to turn us around, and maybe the club are advocating patience. I think some of us are thinking, I'd rather get out of it sooner rather than later.
Yeah, no, you're right. It is quite hard to imagine a season worse than Sunderland's Simon Grayson, Chris Coleman relegation special, because that was a disaster. That was so bad, and it just so completely utterly depressing. So yeah, to have topped that, certainly some effort. You touched on it a bit earlier, Rich. You've lost your last two. Is there, what's sort of the explanation for that one? I mean, obviously it was against quality teams that you've lost to in Peterborough most recently, and Rotherham in the game before, but is there any sort of worrying trends that have emerged that we might be able to exploit?
The worrying trend, put it simply, is what I mentioned before, is that we just don't seem to be able to beat the teams around us. Apart from Fleetwood, who I believe were in the top six when we beat them earlier in the year, we haven't beaten a single team around us. I mentioned November, December. That was a really tricky period for us, where Lambert rotated almost seemingly on a minute by minute basis. We were changing formations and inconsistent team selections, and it took us a while to get back on track. We got thumped by Lincoln over Christmas, and then found a bit more of a solid formation. We went to a three at the back and had two up front, and it worked. Wickham, we put in a good performance, maybe should have won, and put together a string of wins after that. And then I think probably, I don't know whether it was obstinate or maybe it was complacency, used the same system against Rotherham, who had done a number of at Portman Road earlier in the season and were quite physical, quite direct. And we thought that we could turn up to their place and kind of do what we'd done to the likes of Tranmere, Accrington. And we got found out. And Peterborough was the same. And I go back to this kind of mental fragility. I think there's definitely something to be said about our heads dropping when we concede first. So if you want to tip, score first against us. But in the big games, it's been a perennial struggle for Ipswich for years. If it's a game on Sky, or it's a game that needs to keep us in the division or get us into the playoffs, rest assured that Ipswich will balls it up somehow. So if you guys are just outside the top six, aren't you? So you've got a good chance just by your league position before even balls kicked on Saturday, I would suggest.
Yeah, we had a similar trend really sort of going into Christmas. We did get the early season win on TV against Pompey, which looks better by the week and's kind of been cancelled out by them telling us over last weekend. But we have had a few better moments on TV, but we've had a similar record of struggling. We obviously had the big win against Wickham last month, which was really our statement win under Parkinson, which seemed to propel us back into this promotion race. No one other than Rotherham seems to want to win. You mentioned Paul Lambert's rotation. He's obviously an interesting character. He's someone who's linked fairly heavily with the Sunderland job after we sacked Simon Grayson in that god-awful Championship season. And it's a weird one, because at the time, I kind of saw him as maybe yesterday's man, as a guy whose career was going in one direction. I wasn't too keen on him. How's he got on in League One with you guys this year?
I think so. Lambert came in kind of a third of the way into the season where we got relegated after Paul Hurst. They kind of sold all of our best players and replaced them with League One and League Two players, and gave him basically a no chance of survival. And what Lambert did, to his credit, is kind of win the PR battle with supporters and challenge the owner in a way that hadn't been done before. We were half-arsing it a lot as a club. It's I don't know whether you've travelled to Ipswich, but we're kind of politely put in the arse end of nowhere. It's a remote town, but it's a big town, and there's kind of a big kind of community around the club that had basically been left to kind of get on with it, and the club didn't really care about the community. So Lambert did really good to bring supporters back on side, to try and integrate the community much better. I'm not going to pretend that the football was particularly decent. There was points in that relegation season where you thought there was kind of green shoots of recovering the way that we were playing. You guys obviously are familiar with Mick McCarthy's style of play, and we'd kind of, I'd say endured is probably a bit of a harsh word, but we'd come to understand that way of playing, and it didn't go down particularly well at Portman Road, I'm not going to lie. And so Lambert had to try and undo all of that and whatever stuff Hurst was doing while he was with us as well. So it's a difficult challenge, but tactically, to your point, we just see inconsistency. We kind of see a good run of form, of consistency with the tactics, with decent selections, and then suddenly we'll have a defeat or a couple of defeats, and it's back to square one. They're kind of back to the drawing board. The players don't know what's going on. We certainly don't know what's going on, and then we'll suddenly stumble across something. So it does feel like the jury's out on him as a tactical manager, but as I said, as a club manager, as someone who's trying to bring the supporters closer to the club, he's done a good job in that respect.
Yeah, no, I really can't work him out. Like, I remember when he was at Norwich, and there were people who would sort of argue sports writers I respect, who were convinced he was better than Brendan Rodgers and Roberto Martinez, and he was the one. And then at Villa, it started off okay. Then it all went wrong. Then they couldn't score any goals. And since then, he just seems to have got more and more dour. And the jobs he's took on seem to have gone worse and worse until Ipswich. And this kind of mini revival, it looked like he was going to have and then not going to have. And I still, find it quite interesting. The tactical tweaking, that seems to be something I remember sort of him doing at Villa with not much success.
Yes.
And doing with quite a lot of success at Norwich, where it was like,
there was one way, wasn't it? At Norwich, you knew it was one up front, and you knew that they would pack the midfield, and we found to our cost they smashed us twice that season to go up, straight up from League One and through the Championship to the Premier League, and you knew exactly what you were going to get. The question was whether you could deal with the likes of Houlihan, or whether you had the physicalness to combat Grant Holt. And we certainly did that season. And then, as you say, suddenly, he got the big move to Villa. I think he moved to Villa at the wrong time. And to be fair to him, he seems to have joined clubs like Stoke and Wolves, and certainly ourselves, where we're kind of at our lowest point, where we're struggling. And that's always a difficult proposition. So, we've just offered him a 5-year contract. The jury's certainly out on whether that was the right decision, but you definitely feel that we need some stability. And I think probably he does as well. And hopefully it will play out for us. But at the moment, as I say, there's a little bit of pressure, I think, that's building, that we've been in the top 6 for most of the season, and to drop out now would be a bit of a disappointing end to the season, and questions would rightly be asked.
Yeah, no, I did want to raise that 5-year contract, because I think it was one to people who follow the league was seen as a bit of a head scratcher, because it did come, sort of like you said, after you've had that bit of a wobble after the excellent start to the season where you raced out into first. And it just seemed like odd timing, but is that how it's been sold by the ownership, as sort of stability, a chance for Ipswich to sort of have the same manager for a prolonged period of time again and rebuilds, hopefully, in your eyes, in the Championship, I guess?
Yeah, that's definitely the way that the owner and our chief of football operations, that is a job title that exists at Ipswich, has kind of sold it. And I think not. I guess as a neutral, I guess, to the Ipswich situation, I can't imagine any team in this day and age giving anyone, apart from maybe Klopp, a 5-year contract. Certainly a team that is in its lowest league position in 60 odd years in League One and so on. And it seems very strange to reward that status with such a long-term deal. I'd have said stability could be achieved with a 3-year deal with, an extension for 1 or something like that. But the timing, I think, was the biggest thing. I think, to be fair to the club and Lambert, it'd been in discussion for a while. And it just happened to culminate at our worst point of the season so far. But 5 years seems really stupid, and we kind of, we've painted ourselves into the corner here about if we want to get rid of him. If our form drops off and we end up 12th, I can't imagine any Ipswich fan would want or hope to see Lambert in the dugout next season. So it's a strange one. But then there's a series of these kind of decisions that we're now used to as Ipswich Town fans, and I won't talk to you guys about owners either. I think we both can feel like each other's pain on that front.
Yeah, no, I mean, Yeah, no, the short term and the long term with Sunderland's been very head scratching, and yeah, the more we find out about our current owners, the more worrying it gets, and I'm sure it's a similar situation with yourselves. It's that's a brutal one, but yeah, and I think you're right. I think anything over 4 years, it becomes novel. It becomes a bit of a joke. I'm sort of thinking of Pardew's 7 years at Newcastle. I'm thinking of Moyes' 7 years at United. It does just sort of get to that point where it's like, well, come on, we know how modern football works. This contract isn't worth the paper it's written on. It's definitely looks like one that it's more likely to go wrong than right. I mean, obviously, you'd hope from your perspective that maybe he does rebuild his rep, maybe you're mid-table in the Championship and he gets poached by a Premier League boss, but more likely than not, it's going to go the other way, isn't it? I think that's more than fair. Who've been the key players for Ipswich sort of switching tracks this year? I mean, I've heard a lot about Flynn Downs. I think Wolfenden, someone who gets mentioned, but who in your eyes have been the best players for Ipswich this time?
Yeah, you've picked the top two. These two will be A, they'll be in the running for our player of the season, and B, if we stay down, they won't stay, because Flynn Downs has started off as a kind of combative defensive midfielder, really good at getting stuck in there and breaking things up, and didn't have a bad pass to kind of get things moving. But this season, I don't know if it's the level below or whether he's just maturing. He's got his all-round midfield game is excellent, and he's the only player that seems to kind of, when the going gets tough, get stuck in. Maybe him and Norwood, who's had a kind of up and down season, but has been amongst the goals. So Downs is certainly one to look out for. He's not going to ping one in from 30 yards, but he might. He's got dribbling now in his game. He did a good run at Rotherham that kind of opened them up, but his all-round game is excellent, and we fully expect him to end up in the Championship at least. Wolfenden's got a lot of suitors as well, including Sheffield United. To Lambert's credit, in this kind of period where we've been at 3-5-2, he's nicked some ideas from Sheffield United. I won't say it's overlapping centre backs as such, but it's the two centre backs, the two wide centre backs as it were, bomb on, and Wolfenden looks comfortable anywhere on the pitch. He's got a good height. He's got a good range of passing, and as a defender, he knows where to be as well. And Sheffield United, we understand as snooping around him seemed to fit their model. And as I say, if we stay down, he will be off. And the trouble we'll then have is in League One, I don't think we can demand a massive fee, which is frustrating. And other than those two, I've mentioned Norwood briefly. Caden Jackson's had a okay campaign, but I think you found the right two there in Downs and Wolfenden.
What's sort of been the secret as to sort of getting to where you are, to getting to fourth, then, if it has been a case where there haven't been that many star performers?
I don't know. It's a really great question, and I think it's one that we've been asking throughout. I don't want to sound disrespectful to the league, but I think the league's crap, and we've beaten the teams that you would expect us to beat. We turn up on day one and beat a Burton side. We scraped that win, but it was a counter-attacking 4-4-2 performance. We just about did enough, and I think it was early on in the season, it was the quality of our squad. I think the not wishing to blow our own trumpet, because we're not we're not as big as maybe even Sunderland are, but there's definitely there's the stature of the club, and you see Alan Judge on the bench, or Will Keane on the bench, or Flynn Downs on the bench, or James Norwood on starting, or what have you. These are names that maybe strike fear into the lower reaches of the league. And we saw Accrington turn up at Portman Road a few weeks ago, and from what I understood, their coaches were taking pictures of the ground, and Portman Road's had seen better days, but there's definitely the feeling that they've kind of lost before they've even walked on the pitch, and that's worked in our favour. And I think slowly throughout the season, teams have realised that actually we're not that difficult to play against, and maybe you don't need to give us the respect. And I mentioned Accrington at Portman Road; they did a number on at their stadium earlier in the season as well. So I think it was force of will and just having better caliber players. I think everyone else, I'm looking at maybe Peterborough, Rotherham certainly. You guys, Portsmouth, have now clicked into gear and are a better cohesive unit than maybe we are. And I think that's probably going to be telling for the next few months.
Yeah, I think we saw that a bit last season, not so much this year, but just by virtue of having maybe 4 or 5 match winners on the pitch and then another 3 to bring up off the bench, really sort of turned a lot of close games in our favour. I'm thinking of sort of us scoring twice after half-time to beat Shrewsbury, doing similar at Plymouth. We won a lot of close games by virtue of having more match winners. Last year, I mean, teams played okay at the Stadium of Light, but there was always that feeling that if the crowd got loud, most teams would crumble there. I think that maybe went away after Coventry scored 5 past us, and maybe hasn't been happening so much this season. But there's still is that fear factor, and I think I was trying to think of differences before we started recording between Ipswich and Sunderland. I feel as if because we went down through the divisions so quickly, we didn't have the time to sort of accrue 18 to 23 sort of bad Championship players to above average League One players. We just had Premier League players that weren't suited to the English Football League, and then sort of average League One players. We sort of missed that step because we went down the division so quickly and the squad turnover has been so high. I do sort of look at that as maybe an edge that Ipswich have on us, having sort of maybe 2 good players for every position, whereas maybe we've got 18 to 20 good players to your 23. Sort of my novice knowledge of Ipswich, that would maybe be a theory I'd have as to an edge you might have in the promotion running.
I think that's fair. I think maybe that was a fairer remark maybe the first half of the season, and the club were very big on the fact that we had such a decent squad, and I think maybe that's flipped the other way now to the point where we were so complacent that we did no business in the window apart from a loan for a backup centre back, and actually we needed a bit of impetus and maybe some fresh faces to liven things up and to stop the complacency from setting in, because I think certainly a lot of our supporters maybe think that we're better than we are. And you look at the squad sheet, there's the team sheet that we put out, and on paper, great team, but there comes a point where you need to do better than just naming the players. They need to know the system, and they need to get stuck in and fight for the points. And I don't think we're there yet. I still think we believe our hype, and I think other teams have now sussed that out. And January would have been a good time to address that. And we decided again to do things on the cheap and not bother. And I think that might end up costing us. It might only cost us an automatic spot, but even then, as I said, we're not beating teams in the top 6, so playoffs should be something that we fear as well. But yeah, I think you're right about maybe the breadth of squad being maybe what we think is a strength, and who knows, maybe towards the end of the season it will be, but jury's still out, I say.
What areas of the squad would fans like to have seen improved?
I don't think it's I think if we're going to persist with the 3-5-2 formation, which I suspect we'll talk about Saturday's match in a bit, I think we might move away from purely because of injury. A bit of extra quality in depth and the wide positions. We've lost Luke Garbett and Kane Vincent-Young, who are both excellent players and had really excellent seasons for us whilst they were playing but fit, but are now missing. So we lack that, and certainly Peterborough exposed that. But I think going back to the point I made about characters and what Norwood brings to us, Norwood is a menace. He's a walking booking, but he's something different in League One, where Championship is trying to emulate the Premier League. The Championship thinks it needs to play pretty football and be like Brentford and Fulham, and to an extent, that does work out. But in League One, I don't think that gets you particularly far. I think that's the style that we were trying to do, but in the end, we've got players trying to play a pretty game, but being kind of, they're having 6 foot, thugs kicking the crap out of them every other week, and sometimes you need a bit to give some of that back. And I think we've just, apart from maybe Downs and Norwood, we don't really have a huge amount of fighters or physical presence in our team, and I think that's probably the big thing that's lacking for us. And again, maybe it's us being complacent that we can pass our way out of the division. What I would say is, we can go direct sometimes, and there's still the McCarthy ways there, but we just, maybe a bit soft, a bit naive, I think is the phrase that's crept in, particularly over these last 2 games against teams in the top 6.
Yeah, that's been a key sort of point of emphasis for Sunderland over the last 2 windows. I don't know whether it's actually worked, but that's definitely been a buzzword, sort of pace and power, more athleticism. That's definitely been something we try in sort of varying degrees of success to do, is to be more League One, more streetwise.
That's the word, definitely.
In year 2, but it's not really worked to any great deal for us, to be honest. So like we should be able to mix it up on Saturday, but whether or not we do successfully it's really hard to tell. I just wanted to touch on Norwood because obviously he was the marquee signing. Like you said, he's sort of given you a bit of physicality, scored some goals. What's going on with him? Because I noticed he was on the bench against Peterborough. Was that a one-off or what's the story?
He was benched for the Tranmere game of all games, actually, the James Norwood derby, and then came off the bench and got an assist for the winner. So he kind of put one to Lambert there, and then was on the bench the next week. I don't know. He's in and out of the team. He's, as I say, he's definitely that presence. I think he's a little bit over exuberant, I guess is the words. But he's first time at this level. And it can tell from time to time. He's the kind of player that at the moment needs 3 chances to score 1. And whilst you do get more than just his goal threat, there are points that have been dropped because Norwood's missed an easy chance. Wickham, we drew 0-0 with at home. We had a goal disallowed. Stupid. There's a whole other podcast, by the way, where we can talk about the League One officials. I'll leave that for another day. But he had a header from 6 yards out that he just needed to get on target. I think Bristol Rovers, he scored in that one, but I think missed some easy chances as well. So I think it's just a little bit hit and miss. And then Will Keane came into the team and looked all right as well. But he's a name that we would expect to see start on Saturday purely because he came on against Peterborough and looked all right. Will Keane didn't have the greatest of games. And we just need to get stuck in a little bit more. Do you know what I mean? As you say, the streetwise or have a bit more of a presence about us, and we just don't have that when it's Will Keane and Caden Jackson up front.
So how do you think Lambert will approach the game given your struggles against the higher position teams in League One? You said you thought you might change formation. What are you expecting? Will Ipswich look to win the game? Will it sort of be business as usual? What do you reckon?
I don't know, Jimmy. That's another good question. I haven't got an answer for you. I mean, I can speculate. I doubt we'd be 3-5-2 again, as I say, because we lost Garbutt and Guion Edwards, who is kind of the wrong version of Streetwise. He's got 10 bookings, and basically all of them are petulant shirt pulls or dodgy slide tackles. So we're lacking options out wide, which makes me think that we'll probably go back to a 4-4-2. We do like the 2 up front. And I'd expect, as I said, Norwood looked okay Saturday against Peterborough. I'd expect him to come in with Jackson. And after that, I couldn't tell you. And in terms of the way that we approach the game, I think we'll set up to not lose. And my fear is that you guys will do likewise. You do well to take the game to us because I think we are hurting. And I think we'll be kind of keep it tight and maybe we'll go quite direct as well. Expect balls punted into the channels for Caden Jackson to chase. He's got pace. And when we're kind of struggling a little bit for form, we do revert to those kind of passes, and Norwood's got a bit of pace about him as well. So that would be my guess is a little bit more direct and 4-4-2 as we call it on the podcast.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely be 3-5-2 if you are trying to play balls in between our centre backs. Willis has good pace. The other 2 are very slow, so that could be a good joy of success. We'll definitely try and start the game quickly. We'll try and replicate what we did against Wickham. Sometimes I think by trying to play the game at a really fast tempo and get on the front foot quickly, we're a bit too wasteful with possession. We sort of can ground the game to a halt just by not keeping the ball in play often enough. But that's definitely what we'll try to do. We'll try and get at you, try and put right what went wrong at Portsmouth, really. And I think that'll be what we try and do.
If you score first as well, as I say, if I'm playing Ipswich, I'm doing exactly that. I'm starting frenetically from minute 1. I'm taking shots from all over the place. I'm trying to get the lead because if you do that, there is a good chance, even if you score after 5 minutes, that we just don't have enough mental kind of fortitude about us to get back into the game. So I'd definitely say that if I was scouting Ipswich, that would be one of the things I would note.
Yeah, we've done a better job as well under Parkinson of turning sort of games where we get the advantage into wins. I mean, last season a big problem was we'd score first and we'd sit on the lead, we'd let the other team come back into the game, so we wouldn't really push for that second goal. But for whatever reason, whether it's luck, whether it's a slight improvement defensively, we have at least on this good run that we were on up until last weekend done a better job of protecting leads. So that will definitely be something that we'll be emphasising and trying to do. Whether or not we do, it's a whole nother kettle of fish, but fingers crossed that will be what we do. Just quickly, before we go to score predictions, Richard, I wanted to touch on the 1-1 game back all the way in August, because I've really struggled to sort of get a grip on Ipswich from that game because Sunderland was so bad. I can't work out whether Ipswich were just competent that day, whether Ipswich were doing stuff that other teams couldn't do. Garbutt's goal, who obviously isn't available this weekend, was a very good one. But it's tricky for me to sort of assess Ipswich based on that performance just because of how bad we were on the day. Was that a particularly good Ipswich showing, or what were your sort of thoughts on that game?
Yeah, I'd say that's one of the best 45 minutes. I said we were a 45-minute team. The first half, we should have been 3-4 up at half time, and I take the point that you guys went at it as well. And Jack Ross, I don't think, had too many fixtures after that one. You guys certainly weren't. Your away support wasn't happy at half time, but I thought we were excellent. And the frustrating thing for us is, if you could put that kind of level of performance in for maybe 60 minutes, I'm not asking for 90, then we would have probably got a few more points on the board and converted some draws into victories, because that game is looked back on now as 2 points dropped, and we chucked we've got this really bad habit of giving away really silly goals, and that was a gift that we gave to you guys, and I would say, yeah, in terms of how we look at that as a performance, I'd say, from what you said, it's a bit of both. It was definitely us at our best for 45 minutes, and certainly you didn't cut it at all. And in terms of predictions and stuff like that, I can't imagine a too dissimilar scoreline on Saturday, but probably a bit of a better performance from you, I'd expect.
Yeah, I mean, we just looked all over the place. I mean, yeah, there was no confidence in the team. Yeah, I do remember half time, because I remember thinking, how much worse does this get for Jack Ross not to be our manager on Monday? And that was only game 2 of the season. I mean, he lasted a couple months longer, but yeah, that and obviously Oxford on the first day of the season really sort of made me think this guy's not long for the job. And I mean, he recovered a bit and then he stopped, and then it's been a wild season. And that was definitely, I don't know, it's a weird one, because it should have been a low point, because like you said, you should have beat us easy that day. But because we nicked the point, it's still one that we might look back on at the end of the season and think, thank God we got that undeserved point at Ipswich due to that, scrappy
Mick McCarthy
goal
would bloody love that kind of point. Yeah, that's a Mick McCarthy special, that is.
Yeah. I remember when he got sacked from us, and I think he was going to get sacked the week before. He might even have been sacked after that game, but we had a 1-1 with Tottenham that was just like that, where they battered us, didn't get the second goal, we equalised, and he just looked like the most relieved man on the planet, because I think he thought, I've just saved my job here. And yeah, no, that's the first memories I think of when you bring good old Mick up.
Yeah.
So, Rich, what do you reckon? Score prediction for Saturday?
I'm going to go for another 1-1. I think if you attack us, then we might crumble, and we might it might be kind of a 2 or a 3-0. But I think the way we'll set up is to try and frustrate and break quickly on the counter attack, and therefore you never know. So I'll go with a 1-1, but a reversal of the kind of form of the game at Portman Road, as in we'll be the team chasing and maybe nicking a point. And you may be being a bit frustrated, perhaps. That's what I would take. I would take that now. But I just don't know what to expect. This league is crazy. We are so crazy. You guys are crazy. This could be a 4-4 or something stupid like that, couldn't it? You just don't know.
I'd be up for that. I'd be up for this.
I'd take a 4-4.
I'd be up for this being the stupid game of the season. I think we're due one. I mean, everything's sort of calmed down a bit after the despair of autumn and winter and sort of the start of winter. And if this is the stupid game, so be it. At least it's against a good team. Yeah, I'll go 1-0. I'm getting 1-1 vibes as well. I think, you make good points about sort of us being evenly matched teams. hopefully we can be good front runners as we have been recently. We can get that early goal and grind it out.
You're the home
I'll
team
go
as
for
well.
I'll go for 1-0 Gooch, but yeah, I completely agree. I think it's going to be a nip and tuck game, just like I was expecting from Portsmouth, and fingers crossed this time it goes our way. Rich, thanks so much for your time this evening, and good luck for the rest of the season after Saturday.
Yeah, you too, mate. See you for the playoffs, eh?
Oh no. Well, yeah. But fingers crossed, no playoff duties for Sunderland. Good luck if you're in them.
Yeah, cheers.
That was a really interesting chat there with Blue Monday. So, score predictions for Ipswich Town. Then, are we feeling confident, Bomber?
I would be confident of a reaction. I think, providing we make the changes that we feel is needed and the changes that we think should happen. There's no reason why we shouldn't be confident of a response. I just as a look forward, I would like to see probably Ozturk in for Lynch on the assumption that he's going to be out through that concussion protocol. I want to see Scowen in for Dobson. I want to see Lafferty in for Wyke. And I wouldn't be unhappy if Maguire started on the bench possibly for Semenyo or someone like that, just someone with a bit of pace.
So what's the score going to be then?
The score, I think we're going to be back to clean sheets. And I think we're going to be 2-0, and it's going to be Lafferty and Gooch.
So what was your prediction again then, Jimmy?
I'll go 1-0 again. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. They're coming off 2 defeats. We're going to be licking our wounds a bit, and I'll say we'll edge out a nervy one. Willis from the corner.
Well, what I've got in my head is a 2-0 win as well. With I think Scowen will get one on his debut and his full debut, and I think Lafferty will score a screamer as well. So all that remains for me to do is to wish a safe journey to the fans who are travelling over to the city for the International Fans Day, and I'm sure you'll enjoy the traditionally amazing Mackham hospitality when you're in town. Cheers for your time this evening, lads.
Thanks very much, Rich.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks for coming on, and thanks to everyone for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the ROKER Report on your podcatcher of choice. Write us a review, and speak to you soon. Ta-ra.